Welcome to the August 20, 2020 Board of Trustee meetings for Johnson County Community College. I'm Greg Musil, the chairman of the board. Help me start the meeting, as we always do, by honoring America and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would note that there are 4 trustees in the board chamber, trustees Cook, Ingram, Snyder, and myself. We have 3 trustees on via Zoom, trustees Cross, Lawson, and Smith Everett. So we have all 7 trustees here, and I'll declare the presence of a quorum. As we start tonight, we have a full agenda, including both a number of honors and awards to announce. And our second most important thing I consider, which is our annual budget public hearing, second only, Dr. Bound, to our selection of a president. So the number 2 priority, I think, of this board. But I want to start with something a little more somber and sober. Last night we lost Mayor Mike Copeland of Olathe. Mayor Copeland was a true public servant, a servant leader. He was very familiar with this college. Very supportive of this college. He was 58 years old. He was taken too soon. So I wanted to acknowledge the fact that as a public servant who was first elected to the city council in Olathe in 1993 and has been mayor since 2001, he gave more than was required of him to public service, and he will be missed, not just in Olathe, but throughout Johnson County and throughout Kansas. So please, if you know the family, please consider sending a note, sending an email, going through the funeral home and acknowledging Mike's service. With that, we will move to our awards and honors section, and I think Dr. McLeod will take charge of that. Thank you, Mickey.
Well, I want to first say good evening to our audience and to the board members, and today we have several awards. Normally, we would get the opportunity to introduce these individuals, let them say a few words and shake hands, but in our current circumstances, we will simply do them the due honor of discussing their great accomplishments. We have a number of League for Innovation Award winners this year. The first of those is the winner of the John and Suzanne Rush Excellence Award, which is Professor James Hopper, Professor of Web Applications and Digital Media. He was nominated by Professor Lisa Fredrickson, who is within his department, and he does act as department chair. What Lisa had to say about him was that Jim is an excellent chair. He is selfless and has a collaborative nature that makes him a role model for others. Jim Hopper's commitment to his students and the college and to advance all teaching and learning have involved a number of innovative programs which we've had significant positive influence on the lives of our students, such as the creation of our student agency, the Web Club, and involvement in the Reverse Career Fair to connect students with potential future employers. His efforts to model leadership through collaboration and cooperation are second to none. Currently, he serves in a range of capacities, including being chair of the Web and Digital Media Department, and he was actually selected by me to chair our Shared Governance Task Force last year for the faculty side. Jim has also served us as chair of the Educational Affairs Committee. He is a great asset to this college, and I'd like to say congratulations to Dr. Jim Hopper as winner of the John and Suzanne Rush Excellence Award. Second, we have a...
I feel like we need to applaud or something, because Dr. Hopper is deserving of that, and maybe we'll have them all back, but that's an impressive award. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's quite all right. Second, we have a former student who has since graduated, but we did try to contact and invite him to listen to being honored. Thomas Soteros, who was a student in computer science who was nominated for the Terry L. Banyan Student Technology Award by Professor Jacob Keir in computer science. Thomas was a full-time enrolled student at Johnson County in the software development program, with the goal of earning a bachelor's degree in computer science. He has maintained a 4.0 GPA over his last 4 semesters as a member of the President's List. And Soteros demonstrates his passion for technology and excellence in the classroom. His professor, Jacob Keir, describes him as knowledgeable, prepared, and friendly. The quote that they have used is, though C++ is often considered one of the more challenging languages to learn, Thomas enjoys the intricacies and algorithmic detail that the language affords. It is a regular occurrence for Thomas to develop advanced, clever, and more efficient approaches to every problem. Often these approaches are things that even his professors had not considered. The level of dedication that he has was admirable, particularly considering the adversity that Thomas has faced. Diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2017, he completed his treatment while persevering and continuing his education at Johnson County, and he graduated successfully from us in May and has moved on for a new degree. So a round of applause for Thomas Soteros. We also were awarded as a program for the Johnson County Honors Program. We were given the award this year for the 2019 Innovation of the Year, and that was given specifically to Tara Kareem, Maria Martinez, a student here who has been a leader in our program, Anna Page, who just retired as director, and Nellie Shuckman, who is the administrative support specialist for the honors program. We received this award because under the leadership of these 4 women, the Johnson County Honors Program tripled its enrollment over the last 4 years because of the numerous hard changes that they have made in helping students to enroll, to understand the honors program, making sure that there is more adaptability to the program, including extending it to students in CTE, which it was not clear before how it worked for CTE students. And so these 4 ladies have done a wonderful job of really rebuilding the Johnson County Honors Program, and we would like to honor them as well.
I hope these folks are watching so they can
So do I. We invited them all.
understand that we truly do appreciate what they do at the college for our students.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Cook.
could I interrupt? And maybe this is a good time to do this. Could you give a 60-second commercial on the significance of the League of Innovation Award for our listening audience? We use those terms quite regularly, but talk about the significance, Dr. McLeod.
For those who do not know, the League for Innovation is a very important group of community colleges across the nation that banded together years ago to consider new ideas, new approaches, and to expand upon what community college is and can be in the United States of America. As a foundational part of what Johnson County is, we serve as a member of the League and have served on the League board for a number of years. And each year, people from across the country, faculty, staff, and students are nominated for League awards. So these are very high-level awards that involve a really kind of rigorous competition from all across the United States. So when we say that our people have won these things, we're seeing them being elevated to a very public status and being given respect for work that they have done in comparison to people in Florida and New York and California. So it is a very high honor to win one of these awards.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Cook, because League of Innovation, it's one of those things we talk about and we don't recognize, I think, sometimes how nationally important it is. All right, we're ready for the 2020 NYSOD Excellence Awards. I say that like I know what NYSOD means, Dr. McLeod.
NYSOD is one of our enrollment and completion specialist groups across the country. And this year, the NYSOD Excellence Awards that were captured by this campus were captured by Dr. Valerie Mann over in Academic Support, who heads up our Academic Learning Center and helps lead our reading program. Leslie Quinn, who serves under Dr. Weber as our registrar, and Linda Turbyfield. These individuals have shown a commitment to completion, to working with students who require a little extra assistance, who need that time on task to help them succeed and to make their goals real, students who require sometimes a little extra remedial work, who sometimes have physical or mental disabilities that require that we explain things and take them a little bit more hand to hand to kind of work through things. And so I'd like to congratulate those three ladies for securing NISOD Excellence Awards this year as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see Dr. Hopper, I think. We have a limited screen here, but Dr. Hopper, could you wave and let us know that you're watching us? Congratulations. Thank you for all you do for the college. Have done, are doing, and will do.
Thank you very much.
You have a great background with your Zoom as well.
Yeah, Dr. Strange and I are spending some time together here at the Sanctum Sanctorum.
Thank you, Jim. The next item on the agenda is our open forum. The open forum is a period that will be held during each regular meeting. It is a period of time when the public can comment on any items they want to visit about. The comments are limited to 5 minutes unless there's a significant number of people speaking, in which case the chair may limit that time. In order to be recognized, an individual must register online during our COVID-19 efforts. And the link is posted the Monday before the board meeting and concludes at 5 p.m. Wednesday, the day before the board meeting. So if you register there, we ask that when you're addressing the board that you should be respectful and encouraged to address individual matters, personnel, or student matters directly with the appropriate college personnel. As a practice, the college does not respond in this setting when the matter concerns personnel or student issues or matters that are being addressed through our standard grievance or other established procedures, or otherwise is subject of review by the college or board. Tonight we have one registered speaker, and that registered speaker is Chris Roselle. Chris, once the text gets you lined up, if you would give your name and address, we will hear your comments.
Hi, my name is Chris Roselle. I'm from Roland Park, 4823 Mohawk Drive, Roland Park, Kansas, 66205.
Please proceed, Chris.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the administration, members of the public. Not required by law. My father, who died in 2012, told all his children and grandchildren a story many times. He said that when he was in high school, junior college, and university, he would calculate during his tests when he thought he had a 70. If he thought he did, he would stop and turn in the exam. That was passing, the minimum required by the course. Why do more, he thought. Then he went into business. There, he was surprised to learn what customers wanted was his best, not 70%. So he readjusted his goal and delivered his best. Friday, a week ago, I received an email from Johnson County Community College stating 7 times that my suggestions were not required by law, so they were implicitly rejected. The letter implied Johnson County Community College does not want to do its best, only the minimum required by law. Really? In 2018, doing the minimum required by law gave us a 45.5% voter turnout rate at the college. Voter turnout, as you know, is an indicator for one of our institutional learning objectives, social responsibility. Are we really trying to do the least required by law to achieve an institutional learning objective? 100%, right? Not 45%. 45.5% was never considered passing in my courses. Johnson County Community College does not expect only the minimum of its students, as we noted in the prior presentation, it expects their best. Imagine students responding to suggestions for improvement. That is not required by the course. Don't get me wrong. I understand doing the least possible. That was my father's stance as a 19-year-old Georgia Tech graduate in 1937. However, in the real world, the question should not only be, does the law require this? We should also ask whether this is the best we can do. You surely agree, no, it is not our best. The government has given us an opportunity to better achieve one of our institutional learning objectives. Specifically, Johnson County Community College could use the law to achieve our institutional learning objective of social responsibility. The government requires that we do something that could enhance voting, an indicator of social responsibility. Why is this law seen as a burden rather than an opportunity? Why would we want to do as poorly as legally possible? Why not involve our marketing, social media, and political science teachers and students to develop and test the best messages we can? Why do getting data on student responses as something not required by the law, as I was told, rather than as a learning tool, a chance for continual improvement? Why would the college choose to be blind rather than seeing? The Johnson County Community College response to me last week is dysfunctional in the real world. Deliver the best results we can on our institutional learning objectives, not the poorest. Enter the real world and do the best possible, not the least. Readjust our goal, please. Do our best, not our least. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I do want to respond a little bit because I think the entire board would agree with me. We truly appreciate the passion of this priority for you. I think you've probably spoken a dozen times in the last 4 to 5 years on our voter registration, voter engagement, voting results. And that has kept our focus on that. Speaking individually, I want to make sure that the public understands that we are not doing the minimum required by law. We're doing more than that. And we've shared with Mr. Rozelle and the task force now on the Crush the Vote effort a number of things that we've done. 45.5% is not a passing grade on most colleges, but it is in the 90th percentile or higher among community colleges nationally. So I just want to put it in perspective that although an institutional goal is to encourage and teach social responsibility, I think, as Mr. Rozelle mentioned, voting is an indicator of that, not the indicator. We have numerous priorities on this campus, numerous strategic goals that we'll evaluate going into the next year as we do a strategic planning. But we have implemented changes almost every year in the last 4 or 5 years, many of them at the suggestion of Mr. Rozelle, which we appreciate and he deserves credit for. We have a task force, as we mentioned, Tara Kareem, who was honored earlier tonight about the honors program, is leading that up, and she presented to the board last month. So I don't want to leave the impression with anybody that we don't care, that we're just doing the minimum, or that we don't believe voting registration, voting engagement is important to our students. With that, we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the board reports. The first one is college lobbyist Dick Carter. I assume Dick is joining us from Topeka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This month is a very brief report. Other than the election and a couple of meetings, not a lot has happened in the legislative arena, but I did want to provide some highlights of items that have occurred in those two areas. Specifically as it relates to the budget for the state of Kansas, that's one of the things that I track on a regular basis. There's no anomalies that we noticed in the July revenue report. Keep in mind that that was the delayed month when tax filings were due, and really we're not seeing much that would show us anything out of line. However, we are still anticipating, based on what we're hearing from budget projections, a $1.4 billion shortfall by about this same time next year. So we'll continue to monitor the budget process and make sure that we know exactly where we fit into that bigger picture. The August primary was held on August 4th, and it was an interesting primary this year. There were a number of races that took more than a week to determine the winner. In fact, just this week, we learned the outcome of a Senate race down in southeast Kansas between Virgil Peck and Dan Goddard. Peck edged out Goddard in that particular race. And in the House, just this week, between Coleman and Fraunfelter up in Wyandotte County. I'll talk about that one in a little bit later, just about what we think we may see in the general election. The Senate saw moderate incumbents lose to more conservative challengers. The key will be in November to see if that same list holds true, or if Democrats defeat some of those more conservative candidates that won in the primary. As it relates specifically to higher education, because that's the area that I like to focus on, Senator Ed Berger in Hutchinson lost his primary. He was on the Senate Education Committee, also served on the Future of Higher Education Council that I'll talk about a little bit later, and was a former president of Hutchinson Community College. So that will be a key loss for higher education in the Senate. Senator Baumgartner, while she has a general election opponent, is also working for a leadership spot in the Senate. And so chances are likely that she may not be the education chair in the Senate. And again, having someone who knows so much about higher ed running that committee is key. There's a couple of other important races that I think are ones to watch. The Woodard-Williams race in Lenexa is going to be a serious race to watch. Representative Woodard is a strong proponent for higher education in Kansas. He serves on the House Higher Ed Budget Committee and is also currently serving on the Future of Higher Ed Council. And then in the Senate, the Thompson-Constance race in Shawnee is also one to watch. Senator Thompson filled out served on the Senate Education Committee. Now, keep in mind, though, that's what things look like today. I think that not only is the legislature going to look very different in 2021, but leadership will be different, as will many of those who have been serving in education roles within the political process. Let me turn attention now to the Future of Higher Education Council. That group met on Tuesday. I'm pretty sure that Trustee Ingram will provide some greater details about that meeting, but I just want to highlight a few areas that I observed. There's some concern about a strategic plan that was brought up. It appears to date back to around 2017, and really this group should be looking at what that future looks like as far as a strategic plan is concerned. So we'll see what happens there and where that might go. We always talk about transparency. This group did not broadcast or put out a video or audio link publicly, and so we had to try really hard to find out how to even participate in the meeting from afar. So that continues to be an issue as this group is making recommendations for the future of higher ed. There's very little opportunity to be able to easily access those meetings. There's still 2 meetings ahead. We've got really no idea what the outcome may look like. And keep in mind, this is a Board of Regents generated group and process. This is not a legislative directive from the Kansas legislature. The next meeting will be on September 22nd, next month. The System Council of Government Relations Officers for Higher Education had its retreat, and I'm a part of that group. We met on August 14th virtually. There was discussion of a coordinated strategy from the Board of Regents, whether or not a higher education day will be allowed at the Capitol in 2021. That did not happen in 2020. And there was some discussion of how the 20th day numbers might look and how the legislature handles that in relationship to funding. Finally, the November 3rd general election is sort of the next big thing that we're watching. I do believe that write-ins will play a role in this election. We saw some of that play out in the primary election with some state Board of Education races. We've heard that Representative Fraunfelter intends to stage a write-in campaign for his seat that he's been holding for more than 6 terms. So we'll see that. We may see write-ins play a role in other areas of the state in a significantly more important way than we've ever seen write-in campaigns ever before in Kansas. I think all eyes will really be on the Senate. There are 11 races that have already been determined or that there is no general contest. But there are 8 or so races that we are watching very closely that will determine what the leadership in the Senate looks like and how that body will lean, whether it will get more conservative, whether it will stay about the same as it is. That's all up in the air, and that's kind of what we're paying attention to for November 3rd. Mr. Chair, I would stop there. I know you've got a full agenda, but I would also answer any questions as I'm able.
Okay. I think it's important sometimes that we step back and make sure people understand there are 40 senators in Kansas and 125 House members. So fully 27% of the Senate has already been determined without a general election opponent. When you say 11 members out of 40, that's different than 11 members out of 100. So I'm going to start with those of you who are remote first. Trustee Cross, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you to Mr. Carter for the report. You say you think there will be about 28 moderates in the House. Is that right?
Based on the results from the primary and what we think, I mean, that's kind of where things are at right now. And depending on how that group pairs up with either Democrats or depending on what the issue is, even folks who identify as conservative can join one coalition or another, depending on the issue.
Right. I mean, I admire your work greatly, and we've had disagreements, and so respectfully, I'm just asking some other estimates I could trust, and I trust yours too. They're not so optimistic. They think we might only have 20 or 21. The relevance being if there's only 40 Democrats, and for the importance of higher education, we might only have, heartbreaking 62 out of 125. So I'm just asking, and I know it'll vary. It's a sliding scale depending on the issue, but I just wanted to ask. So.
It's a good question, and I think it's still early to determine what the actual outcome is going to look like in the general, and what we're facing once leadership is elected in December. What that makeup and what those agendas are going to look like come January.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Trustee Lawson, any questions?
Oh, no questions, just comments. Thank you so much, Dr. Carter, for that presentation. And I think there's a lot more people around the state, and I think especially in Johnson County, that have stayed out of the Republican primaries. And so I think that's where we're seeing a lot of the changes and some growth in the Democratic Party. So I think that will be pretty interesting to see as the years go on. So thank you.
I agree.
Trustee Smith Everett, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I just had one. You mentioned that this meeting of the Higher Ed Council is really hard to attain when they're meeting. Can you tell me who else is making it to these meetings and being able to be there present with you and the members of that group?
Sure, we've been joining electronically, at least people like myself who are observing. I know that Heather Morgan has been on the Zoom meetings, but she was there in person and presented at this particular meeting. They usually confirm their meeting date at the conclusion of the meeting that occurs. And so that's how we know the next meeting is September 22nd. But when I have to text or email in to the Board of Regents, to my counterparts, to find out how to access the meeting, that's when it becomes a little concerning that it's that difficult to, it's not difficult to access once I have the link, but if the link's not available, that's a bit concerning.
And it's not clear and published in any reliable way where and when this next meeting will happen for those that are just catching on to these meetings.
Yeah, well, the meetings have been taking place at the Board of Regents office, and I'm hoping that by then we'll have yet another link available to access the meeting, certainly more than 5 to 10 minutes before the meeting begins.
Okay, thank you very much. The legislative race this year is critical to higher ed and a lot of other really important issues, and I appreciate your 2 cents on it.
Thank you.
I'm going to go, Trustee Ingram, do you want to speak to the Higher Education Council, future of higher ed?
I do, and basically what I wanted to do is to thank Dick, because that's the first time that I've ever heard that access was a problem. That was the 3rd meeting, but until you hear about something, you can't respond to it either, and I will make sure that I question that as well, so there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to have easier access, so I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you.
And Trustee Ingram is a member of that council, so she certainly knows when the meetings are and will share that information. But Trustee Cook, questions? Trustee Snyder? Thank you, Mr. Carter. I think you're off the hook.
Thank you, sir.
You look a lot like Patton with that flag behind you. Have a good evening. Next is the Faculty Association. Dr. Leiker, come on up.
Well, my report this month is bittersweet. For instructional faculty, mid-August is a time when we return to campus, and most of us look forward to reconnecting with colleagues in the hallways, commiserating about too many meetings, opening conversations with questions like, so are you ready for next week? And of course, meeting the rush of students. The changed nature of things was driven home to me this week when, for the first time since I was 6 years old, not counting the 5 years I spent in private business, going back to school meant not having to leave my house. Even faculty who've never attended an all-staff breakfast or make a career out of avoiding the large assemblies in Yardley Hall are commenting on the absence of those traditions as we start this new year. Nonetheless, spirits are high, and faculty are ready to start classes in this new and challenging environment. This week's PDD sessions included one by economist Dan Owens on how to step up your game in online teaching. More than 100 people zoomed in for a special session sponsored by the Faculty Association on how to avoid getting into trouble with FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Those outside of higher ed may not know this, but federal law holds college faculty to high standards of confidentiality when it comes to student grades, and even prohibits us from confirming whether this or that student is enrolled in a particular class. Staying true to FERPA becomes problematic in the new Zoom age we're entering, when the professor has no idea who's listening on the other end of the connection, or if someone is recording a class without the professor or other students' knowledge. The session was conducted by 2 former FA presidents, Dennis Arjo and Melanie Harvey. We were joined by Leslie Quinn, a registrar, who's also a FERPA specialist. And it was organized in town hall fashion, so direct questions could be asked. And from the feedback I've received, faculty found it very helpful and informative. This issue of privacy is coming up in other places too. Nobody hears more about students' personal lives than counselors. yet the sharing of confidential information through plexiglass screens in the advising center, which is a large public space as opposed to a private office, is less than ideal. If I had to sum up the challenge of the month, it's how to replicate the rules and expectations of a physical classroom in an online space. And that is exactly the challenge faced by every professor in the country right now. Of course, not all of our people are teaching online. Almost 20% of our sections are meeting on campus, and many of the questions that surfaced this week had to do with their safety. The experiences of the 18 instructors who held classes in July as part of the spring teach-out might be valuable here. FA conducted a little informal poll, and the responses were mixed. Some July teachers reported students generally respected each other's personal space and wore masks as required. And while it's a little bit odd teaching people whose facial expressions you can't see, for the most part, things went pretty well, those instructors reported. Others did give different responses, telling stories about half of their students simply not showing up. Others described serious problems with campus services, buildings not being prepped for the first day of class, air conditioning not being turned on, trash not being collected. All of which seems to have been addressed promptly from what I can gather, but it offers further signs of how communication between management and instruction continue to fall a little short. Earlier this week, 2 sessions were held by the Return to Campus Task Force trying to address specific questions raised by on-campus faculty. These sessions were the result of conversations between FA and ABC leaders and Dr. Weber when we raised concerns over the summer about a need for improved communication. Similarly, Heather Seitz from Science and a co-chair of the ABC was added to the task force, and in a short time, she's become a useful conduit of information. One rather frustrating obstacle instructors keep running into is that when questions about procedure are directed to higher levels, the answers can be slow or non-existent. And when the answer does arrive, it inevitably comes in one of 2 forms. You can find that on InfoHub or consult with your deans and chairs. I'd like to speak to those briefly. InfoHub has been a remarkable improvement over the communication system we used to have, but the information there is abstract, and it's not the most accessible tool when you need a precise answer in a hurry. And as I've said before, I appreciate the flexibility that's being shown in not trying to mandate a one-size-fits-all approach for every department. And on that, we're in full agreement. However, I think Dr. Bowen identified the problem in his video yesterday quite rightly as a matter of trust. If you want to convey the message that deans, chairs, and individual professors are to interpret safety guidelines in unforeseen situations that affect people's health, those folks on the ground need some assurance that they won't be seeing the underside of a moving bus in case of a bad judgment call. Lacking that assurance, they'll continue to pepper the RTC with hypothetical questions and continue getting frustrated with vague answers. It was asked of me this week, they make us take mandatory training on everything else, from cybersecurity to sexual harassment. Why are we being thrown into a pandemic without so much as a 10-minute training video on how to keep COVID out of our workspaces? I had no answer for that, so I'm passing it on to you. I don't intend these observations to distract from my overall message, which I hope you'll take as positive. Whether teaching an OCB or at the kitchen table, we are back to work. In truth, we've been at work all summer. It's inaccurate to say we're adjusting to the situation. The adjustments happened last spring when the mid-semester shutdown occurred. This is different. This is the result of several months of planning. We're not adapting to COVID anymore. We're actually redefining higher education in permanent ways. I've been following the social media posts concerning the Democrats' virtual convention this week. And of course, what you see there depends on the political point of view of the person doing the posting. But millennials especially seem to be saying that they're finally excited about politics and they never want to watch a political convention the old way ever again. I suspect something similar will occur in colleges and universities. Among ourselves, we're seeing better turnout and participation in Zoom meetings than we did when we were on campus. Students and faculty are discovering new methods of teaching and learning through hybrid models that might make traditional classrooms seem quaint and outdated before the pandemic is over. The bottom line for JCCC is that the future rests less in these buildings and more in the people making those innovations. I'd be a lousy FA president if I didn't remind you of that as we start what is, after all, a negotiation year. Finally, the August meeting is when I would normally be inviting you to our annual beginning of the year FA party. Since normal is now a term worthy of derision, I must announce that no party will be held. Instead, the FA is converting the funds we typically spend on food and alcohol, and that's a lot of money, into a donation to the Counseling Center's Hardship Grant, which provides emergency services for students in need. That motion was made by Professor Samir Hussain at our Tuesday meeting, and it was approved by the General FA. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Leiker, and I know we all appreciate that contribution to the Hardship Fund. Questions in the room for Dr. Leiker? Questions from the online folks? Raise your hand and I'll call on you. I see Trustee Cross, and then I've got you, Trustee Smith Everett. Lee?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. President Leiker, I sometimes feel like I'm watching Prime Minister's questions when you talk. It's so formal and to the point. You think Zoom could be here to stay? Did I hear you right, Jim?
Yes. I think it's definitely here to stay. I think it'll be a part of higher education for a long, long time.
Maybe I'm becoming a dinosaur. I do think there's some benefit to reporting to a central campus. In whatever model of education we subscribe to, I think there's some. I'm just asking. This is preliminary, and we can talk about it later too. But I think that there's some benefit to having in-person learning, though, isn't there?
So I'm not making I am making an observation. I'm not necessarily playing a role of advocacy. We really don't know how this is all going to shake out, but I can tell you that people are adapting so quickly. And speaking as a historian, usually once they've made those adaptations successfully, going back to the old way of things is just a big question mark. Why would you? I, for one, certainly don't hope that face-to-face model goes away, and I don't think it will. But I do think we're going to have to make accommodations to the new technology that we've all had to embrace, some enthusiastically, some reluctantly over the last 6 months. And the pandemic has a long way to go. I can't predict what higher ed will look like in a year from now, let alone, by the time I'm ready to retire. But I do know it'll be dramatically different. So we need to start thinking about the what ifs.
I think that's right, and I agree with that. And I think Greg Musel, Trustee Musel could speak to it also, but I think that it's revolutionized the fabric of the court system. And I think while we will still have some in-person hearings and trials, I think that it is a new barbed wire fence that the tree has grown around, and it'll be hard to rip out. So I appreciate the discussion. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Professor Lake.
The first barbed wire reference in my 9 years on the board. Thank you, Lee. It's your farmer-client reference. Trustee Smith Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Leiker, I want to welcome you and all of the faculty back to campus. Even though it is virtual, we as the board are incredibly grateful for you all and being able to still have a JCCC operation and offering most of our classes in some capacity. So I personally wanted to extend that. I also just wanted to take a note. I think you also mentioned in last month's meeting the angst in the questions from both faculty and some of our student support departments. And I would just like to advocate for grace and say that as somebody in the K-12 world, what we are seeing and what people are asking are really good questions, including questions I'm asking my own supervisors. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, there are some things that we are still not sure of how to answer them or what the proper procedure or protocol is, even with the best planning and intentions. And so I wanted to offer that to you, to the Faculty Association, and to the faculty. With a lack of national leadership in making clear what can and has to be done and what can't be done, it's kind of fending everybody for themselves. And it sets it up to make all of us at the bottom have a lot of angst. And I recognize that, and I want to acknowledge that, and then also encourage all of us to have grace for our administrators, for our supervisors, for every colleague that is trying to figure this out and make the best in a situation that is still ongoing and developing. My husband's a scientist, and even the virus is morphing and changing, and so with that comes changes as well. So those are just my 2 cents. I always appreciate your presentation. I concur with Trustee Cross. It's very, very formal. It does feel like it's a, what did you say, Parliament presentation, I think?
Maybe a traditional education by somebody who was taught in face-to-face classrooms.
Well,
Thank you. That concludes my comments.
So
we
far,
had barbed wire around my school, too.
So far, Dr. Bound, our budget is increased by 4 cents. I believe Mr. Carter gave us his 2 cents and Trustee Smith Everett gave us her 2 cents. We're getting there slowly but surely. Rachel's keeping track of this, folks. Trustee Lawson, do you have any questions or comments for Dr. Leiker? Our technicians are finding her. Drop off.
Mr. Chair, she was having internet connectivity problems a minute ago. She texted me and said she was frozen.
Okay.
I don't know if she's been able to get back on. But
It looks like she has dropped from the feed. So, Jim, I guess what you said in your comments, and they're always so artfully written and eloquently delivered, I think is a society-wide problem. We want precise answers in a hurry. And I'm beginning to realize that this race of human beings is not wired for uncertainty and the lack of answers. And everything about this has uncertainty and lack of answers tied to it, and that's what makes it difficult for everybody, whatever stage you are, whatever place in life. And unfortunately, I don't think that uncertainty is going to go away. But I do appreciate your comments. We certainly appreciate the faculty, whether they're back on campus or teaching virtually, serving our students, which is what our number one mission is.
If I can reply to your comment.
Absolutely.
So I think myself certainly and most of my colleagues understand the gravity of the decisions the college is dealing with, and I think most of us would agree that the college is actually doing a far better job of this, comparatively speaking, than what we're seeing in other institutions, especially in K-12. But I'm going to share a perspective from a classroom instructor's point of view. There's a decision that needs to be made on the moment, and certainty or uncertainty, the decision needs to be made. A student comes into the classroom, they don't feel well. Is it a COVID thing? We don't know. That decision needs to be made right there on the spot. And bad decisions will be made, we get that. But that instructor in the classroom doesn't have the benefit of a lot of discussion and time to contemplate. Hopefully they've done their research, hopefully they're ready for a question like that, but they may not be. So what I'm asking for is some latitude. If you're going to put those decisions on people at that level, I think that's a reasonable thing to expect.
I don't disagree with that in any way. I support that. I think all of us have probably at one time or another seen the underside of your metaphorical bus. And at this point in time, we need to make sure that we all give the grace that Trustee Smith Everett talked about, so that we drive the bus much slower and swerve less, I guess. So thank you for your time and your effort. We appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is the Johnson County Education Research Triangle. That report will be given by Trustee Cross.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The Johnson County Education Research Triangle did not meet in the past month. Our next meeting is scheduled for October, although revenues, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Revenues were up, down, but just 0.8%. So we had about 1.485 million in revenue for the month of July that Mayor Dunn had sent around for us to review on July 31st. And specifically, our next board meeting will be October 26, 2020, K-State Olathe, probably by Zoom, knowing current status of things. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Absent seeing questions, I'll move on to the Kansas Association of Community College Trustees. Trustee Ingram?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next quarterly meeting of the Kansas Association of Community College Trustees will take place via Zoom on Saturday, August the 29th. The Council of Presidents will have their meeting, which is typically coordinated. Usually we do a Friday, Saturday. Our group is going to meet on that Saturday. The Council of Presidents will be meeting on Monday, August the 31st. At this point, the Friday phone calls are continuing. Conversations are now including the return to campus, alternate plans, and how we begin to move forward. So continuous discussions and lots of ideas being shared. Again, I think it's that trying to find certainty during uncertain times that is just mind-boggling to everyone at this point. So I will conclude with that. I will go ahead. I don't know if there's any questions about that. That was more of an announcement than anything else, but if anyone does have questions.
Does not look like it.
Okay. The Future of Higher Education Council did meet this past Tuesday in Topeka, as Mr. Carter suggested. Discussion items included the impact of COVID-19, and we had reports from the Emporia State University President Allison Garrett spoke on behalf of the universities. Heather Morgan spoke on behalf of the community colleges. She is our executive director. And President Jim Gannott spoke on behalf of the technical colleges. All shared a variety of stories of similar concern about financial loss, student success and resilience, and the turnaround of educating our students in a systematic way. Interestingly enough, the comment that was made by President Gannott was that he had found during, talking to his students, he is involved with technology, the technology colleges or technical colleges, that the students they have surveyed prefer face-to-face instruction. So it's kind of interesting to hear there's still a lot of difference out there as to what it will look like in the future. Another discussion item was enrollment equity gaps. There was lengthy discussion of several best practices which have had tremendous impact in boosting underrepresented student access or reducing equity gaps. Those included summer success academies, the academic and social support programs, early college high schools, preparation programs, and community outreach and concurrent enrollment. So with a lot of that information that was presented, the council will then begin to look at recommendations to address the equity gap, which has really surfaced to be one of our top focus items. We also heard presentations that were a review of efficiencies being considered by the universities, community and technical colleges, and as Mr. Carter referenced, the strategic plan. Our next meeting is September the 22nd. Once again, I will just reiterate, I appreciate his bringing his concern to us about the ability to link in. I just wasn't aware of that, but I will bring that forward, so we'll get that taken care of. And that concludes that report.
Okay, Dr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Carter referenced that the strategic plan has been in development since 2017. What are the foundational pillars at this time of that plan that we should be concerned about?
I haven't seen anything I'm concerned about. There are three different pillars to that. One is family and really student success, but they refer to it as family. The other one is business and then innovation. But, I just at this point, I haven't had any major concerns about anything, but it's just been information that's been presented to us. So there's been a lot of discussion, but I just haven't seen anything surfacing. We don't have really, in my mind, we may make some recommendations, but because it wasn't legislatively requested, I'm not even certain as to where our recommendations will go other than through KBOR to consider if that would pose a recommendation for legislative action. That makes sense?
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm looking online. I don't see any other questions. If not, we'll move on to the Johnson County Community College Foundation report. Again, Trustee Ingram.
Yes, thank you very much. The Foundation's Investment Committee, chaired by Treasurer Jeff Alpert, met on Tuesday, July 28th. The committee reviewed the quarterly report from Midwest Trust FCI Advisors, the Foundation's fund managers. As of June 30th, which was the close of the Foundation's most recent fiscal year, we are very happy to report that despite all of the challenges in recent months, the overall Foundation portfolio still grew by more than 4% during the previous 12-month period. Midwest Trust, FCIA, and the Investment Committee's efforts to maintain this level of positive growth is vital, as the earnings on the Foundation's endowed funds is a significant portion of what is available to award annually for our student scholarships. So thank you to Midwest Trust, Jeff Alpert, and the Foundation's Investment Committee for their work. The Foundation's next member social is scheduled for Thursday, August 27th at 4:30 p.m. As Foundation members, all trustees are invited to attend and should have received the information previously. This event will look a little different. It is being held outdoors at the new athletic complex with a maximum attendance of 50 people. Masks and social distancing will be required. For those who do not wish to attend in person, or if the event hits the 50-person max, the event can be viewed online via Zoom. A link will be sent to Foundation members before the event. Foundation members can look forward to remarks from President Bound and small socially distanced group tours of JCCC's beautiful new athletics complex. You should have received details, as we mentioned, but as a reminder, RSVPs are required if you plan to attend, so please contact the Foundation if you have any questions. Finally, I'd like to provide an update on the Foundation's effort to reimagine and transform its annual Some Enchanted Evening Gala. As you likely have heard and seen, this year's Some Enchanted Evening Opportunity campaign has officially launched. Information about the campaign and how to participate went to previous Some Enchanted Evening supporters and all Foundation members the first week of August, and many of you have probably seen the campaign video as well. Just in case you haven't, however, we thought tonight would be a great time to share it with everyone. If we could go ahead and play the Some Enchanted Opportunity video, which was created in partnership by the Foundation and JCCC's Video Services team, we will do that at this time.
Every day, thousands of JCCC students participate in classes eager to learn. Every year, donors generously help those same students achieve their dreams. At every opportunity, the JCCC Foundation pairs donors' passions with the needs of students. Our annual Some Enchanted Evening Scholarship Gala is one of those opportunities. With the ongoing safety and well-being of our community in mind, this year we are reimagining our annual event, and we are excited to launch Some Enchanted Opportunity. This campaign expands giving opportunities to be more inclusive than a one-night gala and reinforces our mission of assisting students in need. 3 pillars, recognition, inspiration, and participation, define this student support campaign. In the end, we will celebrate our students, our college, and our community for pulling together during these challenging and unprecedented times.
Hello, I'm Pam Popp. My husband Jim and I are proud to chair this year's Some Enchanted Opportunity, together with a group of fabulous community leaders who are our campaign committee. For the last 33 years, Some Enchanted Evening has raised generous gifts of all sizes from donors like you to help to make the education dreams of students a reality. Last year, thanks to the generous support of donors like you, JCCC Foundation was able to award more than $1.3 million in student scholarships. That was huge. But the reality is there's still a tremendous need, especially increasing in this environment. That's why we've transformed our efforts this year, and we've created a platform that allows anyone, anywhere, to participate in a community-wide, multi-month campaign. We know that many lives have been impacted over the last several months. The hardships that have resulted from the COVID-19 pandemic mean that even more of our students need our help and support.
Pam and I encourage you to join us in supporting the Johnson County Community College scholarships and student basic needs by making a gift to the Some Enchanted Opportunity campaign. It's up to us. We've got to stand up and ensure that all Johnson County Community College students continue to pursue a better education, a better life for themselves, their families, and the entire community.
You can direct your gift in numerous ways to support JCCC students. In addition to scholarships, you might consider directing your gift to the JCCC Meal Share program or consider a donation to our new Student Basic Needs Center. These programs help students faced with food insecurity, as well as provide resources for other challenges, such as transportation and housing resources. You'll hear about several Some Enchanted Opportunity campaign activities to participate in over the coming months. Contact the JCCC Foundation to learn more, or visit the Some Enchanted Opportunity website to make your gift, supporting JCCC students today.
We appreciate all the JCCC donors.
The efforts of the foundation team and our tremendous Some Enchanted Opportunity Committee, chaired by Pam and Jim. We have already seen tremendous response with many supporters committing to the campaign. Nearly $200,000 is already committed to support JCCC's student scholarships and basic needs programs. So thank you to everyone who has already chosen to participate. Over the course of the coming months, many more opportunities to recognize essential workers who are our 2020 Johnson Countyans of the Year, be inspired by student stories and the impact JCCC has on their lives, and participate in the campaign will be announced. Keep an eye on the website for all the latest latest updates. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you. That's a fabulous video. Questions for Trustee Ingram? It doesn't look like there are any questions. I mean, Pam and Jim, when you chair that event, it's a culmination usually of 5-8 years on the committee, and they're sacrificing by doing their thing virally or virtually like the rest of us. So I really want to call out Pam and Jim Pop for the work they're doing for this.
I think Lee might have tried to ask.
Oh, Lee, did you have were you waving?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you to Trustee Ingram and everybody that put that together. It was a heck of an idea, and I've been liaison a couple of times to the foundation, and I was wondering what we were going to do, and it sure is disappointing that we can't do that this year. So thank you to everyone, and hope it goes forward.
I just did quick math at $1.3 million in scholarship money at a blended rate of $100 a credit hour, which is $6 more than our in-county credit hour. That's 13,000 credit hours that are paid for by people's generous contributions. That's a very impressive number. Okay, the next item on the agenda is our 2020 fiscal year 21 for starting July 1 of 2020 through June 30th of 2021. We have an annual obligation by statute to conduct a public hearing, which was noticed on our website. We had the opportunity there for people to sign up as registered speakers at the public hearing. No one showed up no one registered to speak. I do want to note for the record that Dennis Batliner, 1000 Perry Drive, Overland Park, sent an email into the board, and that will be included in the record as part of the public hearing. I never know your full title, Rachel, but I call you our CFO, Chief Financial Officer, the one that watches all our money and all our budget more carefully than anybody else. Rachel Lears, would you please make your presentation, and then we'll have discussion, and we'll move into a vote.
Sure. Thank you, Trustee Musil. So tonight's public hearing and the board's vote on our legal budget are the final steps in the college's fiscal 2021 budget process. Our legal budget documents must be submitted to the county by August 25th per state statute. The proposed legal budget information that you have before you tonight is the same as the management budget that the board adopted back on May 14th, which was prior to the start of our July 1 fiscal year. The administration is not recommending any changes to the budget at this time. Before we bring forward the recommendation for adoption of the legal budget, I would like to review and summarize its key components, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions from there. So again, this is the 2020-21 proposed legal budget, and for revenues, our budget guidelines indicate that our assessed valuation in the county will increase by 5.25% over last year. The delinquent tax rate would increase from 2% to 4%, and the property tax levy, the college's tax levy, would remain flat at 9.121 mils. We're budgeting for a 1% decrease in credit hour enrollment from the amount that was budgeted in last year, while leaving the tuition and fee amounts unchanged for all residency statuses. So as you can see, that would mean that Johnson County resident students would continue to pay $94 per credit hour, in-state students $112 per credit hour, out-of-state and international students $223 per credit hour, and our metro rate students $138. We're budgeting for a state aid decrease of 15% from the current year actual amount, and that's due to the state budget uncertainties that Mr. Carter referenced. And finally, we're estimating that our investment income will decrease by 40% from the amount that was included in our preliminary budget. In the expense categories, for salary and benefits, we are not budgeting for a change in the total number of positions for faculty and staff full-time. And we did have a 3% average salary increase that was effective July 1, pursuant to the master agreement with the Faculty Association. So even though we're budgeting for the same number of positions with a 3% salary increase, you will see our total salary and benefit budget decrease from last year. And that was because last year's budget, again, as a reminder, last year's budget included a $6 million one-time cost to accrue a new voluntary retirement benefit for employees. In our operating expense category, we have already cut about $1.2 million from the budget for next year due to COVID. And so those were things that we looked at, like travel and special events, supplies, some contracts. Those have already been taken out of the budget. However, there is new funding available in the budget for things like our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. That's budgeted at $200,000, and we have $300,000 for strategic planning and related initiatives from that process. In the capital category, we have again reduced the budget for next year. We took about $5 million out of the budget to defer some of our projects due to financial uncertainty. However, we have left in $4 million for a planned start on our science lab renovations. So again, this year, FY21 would be the first year in what we think would be a multi-year project. Estimated cost total would be between $25 and $30 million. Again, you will see year over year a decrease in the total capital line because last year, as a reminder, we had $15 million budgeted for the final allocation for facilities master plan phases 1 and 2. That was included in last year. So again, year over year, you will see the decrease when we look at the summary, which is what this is. So in the middle column, in the bold font, we do have the proposed legal budget for FY21. Again, this is the general fund of the college. Compared to last year's budget, you can see that for revenues, total revenues at $158.3 million were essentially flat, slightly lower than where we were last year. For expenses, we have just over $162 million, which is about $11 million less than was budgeted last year. Again, we had those two significant one-time allocations last year, the new voluntary retirement benefit and the final large allocation for facilities master plan phases 1 and 2. So because our expenses are budgeted to be larger than revenues, the budget does estimate a use of reserves or a plan to spend down of reserves in the amount approximately $3.7 million, again, for the general fund of the college, and that would be if the budget were to be fully expended. So I will stop there and see what questions you have.
I'm not sure, I'm looking at our general counsel, Kelsey Nazar. I don't know that I need to open a public hearing when there's nobody in the room and we had registration, but to the extent, to make it clear, we did open an opportunity for anybody from the public to comment on the public hearing pursuant to state statute. Nobody responded to that to register, so I will declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for questions from trustees. And I think I'd start with questions first, and then we'll move into comments. No, just if you have any questions or comments, let's do it now. Trustee Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have comments, but I'll wait to make my comments at the management report when we adopt the budget, when we deal with this recommendation.
And just so everybody knows, we've rearranged the order of the agenda so that the first item on the management committee agenda will be actually a motion and a discussion and vote on the budget right after this hearing. But during the public hearing now, or during the closed hearing, if you have questions of Rachel or questions of Dr. Bound, anybody regarding the budget, let's take those now, and then we can make comments during the management committee report. Trustee Cross, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we are spending out of reserves for this budget. Do I read that right? See that right?
Correct.
$3.7 million.
$0.7 million, yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? If not, okay, Trustee Lawson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the budget packet that we got, I just had some questions about. I see the actual numbers for 2018-19 and the actual numbers for 2019 and 20. I don't see the budgeted ones that we had for 2018. Do you by chance have what was budgeted in 2018 and 2019 for the total all, and then of course the total tax, and then the assessed valuation? I'm sure you have that somewhere.
I do not have it with me tonight. Those numbers would be available in the budget documents that are on the college website, either in the budget workshop book or in the adopted budgets from those previous years.
And so that would be the same for 2019 and 2020 as well. So I will do as much research as I can right now. The other question I have, is there going to be a millage reduction worksheet that's going to help us in figuring out our mill levy so it's not so much guessing?
We provided some analysis at the management committee as far as what a mill levy reduction would look like. Is that what you're asking?
So I submitted the state of Michigan's mill levy reduction worksheet that they have for all governing boards that also govern their community colleges. And because the Schoolcraft College of Michigan is one of our peer institutions, that was a main driving force to how they manage their mill levy. I have turned that in on several occasions. Has that been considered in going forward with this budget, is to be able to actually have these numbers looked at through a formula instead of guessing?
I think the levy reduction worksheets that you're talking about, those are not required in Kansas. I am familiar with the document that you're talking about, and that isn't required. So no, I haven't completed something like that.
Do you have the budget sheet that you showed to management committee accessible that you could show?
Yes.
And I don't know if management committee saw, I haven't seen the Michigan formula that Trustee Lawson is referring to. So I don't know what, is that part of their budget publication process?
I understand that's a statutory requirement there where they're required to complete different worksheets if certain amounts of taxes are generated.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I understand the question correctly, I believe that information was furnished at our workshop in April. It was also included in our management workshop in May, where we have shown what the reduction would be. The budget report that we have before us tonight shows the mill levy in each of the categories that gets to the 9.121. So I think since at least April, if not back to December, we've had several discussions about the mill levy reductions from a 1/10 mill to a 1/4 of a mill. And I don't know if that's what Trustee Lawson is referring to that's going on in Michigan, but I believe we've had considerable information and discussion presented by Ms. Lears regarding that question.
Right, and if that is the question, then Adrian, could we go back to the the slideshow. Can you show that on the screen? There we go. Thank you. If that is the question that's at hand, then these are the calculations that we have provided previously, including at the management committee meeting. I think, Dr. Cook, this is what you're referring to, what's on the screen, as far as what the amounts would be if JCCC was to adjust our mill levy.
And Rachel, if I may, if I think about the proposal that's in front of you is coming from the management team, it does include a flat mill levy, keeping it where we are from the previous year at 9.121 mils.
Yes. And that's what's proposed in the second column, where we have the proposed legal budget FY21, again, at the current mill levy rate with a 5.25% increase in valuation and 4% estimated delinquencies. Our total estimated tax revenue would be the $113 million in all funds. That's $3 million higher than the budget for last year, FY20, and that's due to the increase in assessed valuation. It is not due to an increase in the mill levy rate.
So if I can finish, the question that I raised was actually a formula. It's not guessing. So at the rate that we're seeing over the since December, I've submitted a worksheet that would actually have a formula based on the state equalized value, on the county's equalized value, and the assessed value. So those are things that I think we should consider. I have not brought up anything about state statutes. I've not brought up anything about mandates. This is something that we can propose at the local level with home rule to be able to offer the people of Johnson County the satisfaction in knowing that where the numbers come from and not, rolling the dice and saying, well, today we're going to do this amount, or, based on a majority vote, we're going to roll back. Let's pick an arbitrary number. So I think having a worksheet that actually has, the state's equalized value, the county equalized value, and assessed value is something that other states and community colleges have done very successfully. And especially since one of those colleges is our peer institutions, that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. So that's my question is, when I'm looking at the budget, I don't see a actual formula here going forward of how we set the mill levy based on these criteria for reduction, but then also looking at the growth population of Johnson County is at 1.4%. So I'm not seeing the numbers for increasing the amount of people that are moving into Johnson County. And we can't talk in terms of flat rate because the people don't feel a flat tax. They feel a percentage of their tax. And that is right now, especially an increase. So it's difficult to hear flat when the people at home do not feel a flat tax. So of course, 5.25% on a $100,000 house is going to have a very different impact than it would on a $300,000 or $1 million or commercial property. So the discussion around flat tax is a false equivalence. And I think we need to be able to state exactly what it is, that we are based on a percentage. And we do get more money when there's more people in our county. And we've had a growth rate that is not being accounted here. We're decreasing the amount of expenses, and we have property values that have increased. On the JOCO 2020 appraisal side, it says it can be from 5 to 10%. And the growth population with that, so we are ballooning our reserves. I don't see a reserve rollback. I've asked for a significant rollback. I've asked for programs. I've asked for tuition reduction. I've asked for a lot of things that has been very difficult to get through and almost have to put everyone on the spot to say what's going on. Why is this not getting looked at? And when it is looked at, it's cherry picked as to what are the items that are wanting to be looked at and discussed, and then everything else is in the trash. So that's kind of where I'm standing right now. I worked on this budget guidelines with the people, so I appreciate the respect to be able to have it really thoroughly looked at. And there's a lot of concern around the extra taxing of people. And when we have the concerns around the virtual online courses, are we looking at reducing the rate of that tuition for the virtual courses? The expenses for virtual courses are not the same as in class. So I'm not seeing these components looked at, but I'm seeing the same budget that rolled out last year, and regardless to any of the concerns that I've had, which I've been told I have input, regardless of the concerns of the people that have repetitively emailed in, and regardless of the concerns of COVID right now and the concerns of what I hear from faculty, I'm not seeing any change whatsoever. So are we being listened to?
I'm going to try to answer that because I'm not sure I think those are policy questions, not questions for the budget. But let's be clear about what we're doing here. This is a statutory requirement to adopt a budget which establishes the maximum amount we can spend in a current budget year without having another public hearing and another vote. So we're establishing a ceiling of the most that this college could spend legally for fiscal year 2021. Now, we also know that we spend about 93 or 94% of our budgeted authority historically. This budget continues to have the flexibility in it to respond to COVID issues or any other issues that come up, just as we do every other year. We start in December with establishing budget guidelines, and those guidelines initially say, are we going to increase the mill levy from 9.121, the mill levy being, each mill being $1 of tax on every $1,000 of valuation, or are we not going to? Last December, we said we're not going to. We estimate what the valuation of the county's property will be, and that's done every January 1. And so in December, we estimate what we think the increase will be. Last December, I think we estimated 4.5%, something in that range. It turned out in March, once all the valuations were reported by the county appraiser, on whom we rely, that the budget, the increased valuation was like 5.75%. And we reduced that to a more conservative number, to 5.25%. And then we increased our delinquency rate, assuming that because of the economic factors, some taxpayers may not be able to pay their taxes on time or at all. So we increased that from 2% delinquency to 4% delinquency. That is in fact a formula, and when you attach that formula to the assessed valuation of the county, and which is what is reported to the state for budget purposes, you yield a number that in this case is $107,850,128 of total tax levied as published.
Yes.
So, I don't know, and maybe we ought to move into the discussion because I don't understand how that is a guesstimate or is guesswork or is rolling the dice. Those numbers have been in a mathematical formula since December. We have adjusted 2 of the variables based on new information, reducing what we can get by delinquency and reducing the amount of appraised value. And now we're here to adopt a budget by a majority vote. So I think what I'm going to do is move into the management committee, and with your approval, Chairman Cook, just move into the budget discussion so we can continue this. Rachel will be here if we have additional questions, but we've had the report. Is there any motion to do something with respect to the budget following the hearing and the presentation?
Well, I think point of order would be that we close the public hearing and we move right into the management report.
I think that's what we've done. That's what we've done.
Okay.
So as chairman.
Thank you. The management committee did meet on August 5th at 8 a.m. Trustees Smith Everett, Trustee Snyder, and I attended, along with a plethora of college administrators, faculty, and staff. And as Ms. Lears presented tonight, we had an extensive presentation at that management meeting. We did have detailed discussion about mill levy rollback, about enrollments. You heard Mr. Carter earlier tonight talk about a projected $1.4 billion setback in state expected funds by next year at this time. We have seen a decline in state revenue come to this college, as it has to all colleges, as a part of the percentage. We did commit to leaving tuition where it was. We had considerable discussion about mill levy rollback, but I would say again, those discussions began as early as December. I would clarify, Mr. Chairman, you said the formula numbers have been in place since last year. Many of those formula numbers have been placed in the history of this college. So I think there's strong history validating the formula. I would suggest if new data, for example, I think Trustee Lawson mentions an interesting point of a 1.4% growth factor. That too is a projection. As a former superintendent of schools, we were always interested in birth rate of our community to determine how many kindergartners we might have 5 years down the line and how many seniors we might have another 12 years down the line. But those were projections, but that's a good factor, I think, to consider. I think the management team felt very comfortable. Trustee Smith-Everett and Trustee Snyder can speak for themselves, but I believe that we feel very comfortable in the information that Ms. Lears presented and that all of the financial staff has put together. I believe there was a number that was reported there. Yes, we have had concerns about what's the right amount of reserve to have. But Rachel put together a nice several year, I don't want to say 10 years, but I think you had a several year report of our reserves over time. This college has consistently been concerned about a certain kind of reserve, and as we've indicated this year, we're going to project over $3 million out of that reserve to come into our budget. I believe we've also had the benefit of using that reserve to pay down debt in advance when certain debt came due, and we've made a decision to make some early payments to help save some interest money. So I feel very, very good about the discussions we've had since December about this topic, and I think to officially put the motion on the floor, I would say it is the recommendation of the Management Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the fiscal year 2021 budget as published, which includes total property tax levied of $107,850,128 for fiscal 2021, compared to $101,702,069 for fiscal year 2020, and does hereby certify said budget to the County Clerk of Johnson County, Kansas for collection in the manner prescribed by law, and I'll make that motion.
Been moved by Trustee Cook. Is there a second?
I think Lee.
Second?
Oh, sorry, Lee. Moved by Trustee Cook and seconded by Trustee Cross to adopt the recommendation of the Management Committee with respect to the fiscal year 2021 budget as published prior to this meeting. Is there discussion? Trustee Snyder?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Dr. Cook mentioned, the Management Committee has had a number of deliberations about this budget. Just my personal nature, I'm always in favor of lowering the mill levy. In particular, I've been distressed that the burden of the college is put too greatly on the shoulders of county taxpayers, and we need to be very mindful of that going forward. As late as 2 or 3 weeks ago, I sent an email to Dr. Bound, challenging the college on our ability to lower the mill levy, and the responses I got back persuaded me that this is the right budget to move forward with, and with that, it does have my tepid support. Had our enrollment been more aggressive at this point, I might have had a different agenda in mind, but knowing where our enrollment is, knowing that the state is cutting, I think this is the appropriate thing to do. However, as we roll into next year, particularly if COVID continues to have a challenge on our local economy, I'm going to be looking for more aggressive changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Snyder. Other discussion? Trustee Smith Everett?
I just wanted to speak as another member of the management committee. I contacted Ms. Lears, had an in-depth conversation with her with our budget notebook, asked a lot of questions about how the formulas work and how we get the projections. I am equally nervous. I think nobody knows what this economy is going to do and how that will affect our local economy. I think what I have realized after listening to national experts as well as our own team is probably the year to be most concerned for our local taxpayers will be the following budget year, just following precedents in how local economies do. It's a lagged reaction to the COVID effect. So I would agree with Paul, with Trustee Snyder on that I'm comfortable approving this budget as it is, knowing that probably next year we're going to have to make some adjustments because of either the state revenue or the local impact to taxpayers and what our return is from the local economy and tax base. So that concludes my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Trustee Ingram?
Yes, I'll go ahead and thank you, Trustee Smith Everett, because I think you captured many of my thoughts in that piece of your conversation. What I would also want to offer is, in a conversation that I recently had with someone who's elected in the county, is just that, the recovery and what that's going to look like and when that will even be possible to move forward, and that the recovery is probably not just going to be 1 year, it's going to be several years. We just don't know these things. So I wanted to also just say that I appreciated the sweeps and the cuts that I understand have been made, and just the attention that's always given. It's been pretty much, we thank you for what you do, but I know it's business as usual, but the circumstances this year certainly, in the 5 years that I've been on the board, there's always been something that's challenged us, but this year is equally unique, and 2020 has kind of outdone itself for us. So I agree with Trustee Smith Everett that I think looking at next year, that's when the impact of all of this is really going to hit our local taxpayers. So I agree with you also, Trustee Snyder, that we've got a lot of big decisions ahead of us too. So thank you.
Other comments? I
Mr.
will.
Chair.
Lee?
Yes, sir. I think I probably concur with Trustee Smith Everett and Ingram. And while I respect the trustee, Mr. Snyder, I'll probably take the opposite view. I'm happy with this budget. I think it's a nice compromise. While I've observed other nonprofits and organizations make budget cuts in this climate, I commend us for the courage to stick by our budget and to remain as strong as we can so that we can be in place when I think our citizens and the workforce needs us. So I have opposed, I think I voted for a mill cut in 2014, and I've opposed every other mill cut since. And I'd be opposed to one now, just to express my thoughts to Dr. Bound. We did meet, I believe, last week, but I've had a few conversations with him, and I'm just giving him my thoughts. I think now's the time to keep in place what we have. We're going to need that infrastructure once. I think we'll see economic downturns here. I'm not alone in that analysis or forecast, but they'll need a community college, and they'll need us in place, and we'll be glad we kept the infrastructure we have. So I'm happy with this budget, and I sure appreciate all the work. And Rachel Lears has been nothing but above board. I've had 2 terms as treasurer, and I don't feel like she's ever hidden anything or obfuscated. So I just wanted to say that and commend her and all of our staff for their work. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Cross, thank you. I guess I will close then by just stating, Trustee Lawson?
Yeah, my comments were cut off and then suddenly moved to management meeting, so I would like the opportunity to finish what I have to say.
Yes, please.
So this is the single largest year we've had a decrease in jobs since the 1920s, and nobody is talking about a budget cut. This is about spending our reserves. This is about more money going into our reserves when we already have a very large reserve. Last few months, we heard from the audit committee that we could survive with no money coming in at all for 11 months, just based on our reserves. That's a lot more than 25% policy that we have. So nobody is talking about a budget cut. Nobody is talking about taking away what we already have. We can do what we already have. And the expenses going virtual have shown that we are spending less money and because we have less expenses. So we are going to be getting more money by this 5.25%, and it could go up higher. We don't know exactly when the official appraisal values will come in and what that gets locked in and set. So we're doing an estimate on 5.25%, but it could go up a lot higher. Will we find out about that when it actually comes to value? Do we have a ratchet in place that says if it goes over 5.25%, we do not take anything more? No, I don't hear that. I hear that if it ends up at 8%, we take it all, and the people don't know about that. So I don't hear ratchets in place. I don't hear being able to spend down the reserves in a significant way that really benefits the people of this community, as if, I've mentioned before, as if we're Marie Antoinette, as if we sit in a plush of reserves and we don't see the impact that that's having in the community. We don't see the impact it's having when families at $100,000 home or $150,000 home can't buy here because they're getting priced out. This is the impact that we have. This morning, Johnson County commissioners had a discussion on rolling back their mill, and they were discussing a 1/4 rollback. I'm not hearing any of that. And I'm hearing, based on the population growth, less expenses, that we are getting more money in our reserves. I don't hear new programs. There's not new hire faculty. There's not pay raises. I don't hear where we're spending this money. And we can every year reevaluate. We can't make a decision on a budget that is set in stone for multiple years. It's one by one. I've also heard many times every single board member talk about how if there needs to be a change that comes up, that as a board, we can make those changes all the way through. So I'm not seeing this intensity to say, well, we have to catastrophize and say we have to buffer ourselves to the max and not think about the people that are actually paying the bill, not think about the amount of job losses that we're having right now in this county and the impact that that has if we're not lowering our tuition or doing a sale on tuition or focusing on in-demand courses. We have faculty that we can't hire because we don't have the right amount of courses for them or certifications or qualified faculty members in demand careers. Why is that not getting looked at? I feel like I'm talking into the void, and no matter how much I bring up the issues that are going on in the county and the people, and you guys have it set your own way. You're going to do it your own way. That's fine. But I'm going to talk about it, and I'm not going to be okay with it either. And please do not say flat tax, because we are not a flat tax, period. So this is not a flat anything. This is a growth percentage, and it's regressive. So please consider who you are requesting the paycheck from and how that is going to quite possibly cause more defaults. Have you thought about that? The fact that we are going to be asking more people, you guys are taxing more people, more funds that we're not going to do anything with, and you don't think that's going to have an impact on the delinquency rate? So yeah, I'm a hell no on this vote.
Does that conclude your remarks, Trustee Lawson?
Possibly.
Well, if you've got more, let's go ahead and hear them. Everybody has spoken except me, so if you have other comments on the budget, we'd be happy to hear them now.
I'll wait till you finish.
The chair goes last, right, Mr. Chair?
You know, I'll say my piece. If Trustee Lawson has short response to that, she can certainly offer it. We have never on this board tried to stop anybody from making comments about the budget, however they wanted to make them. I think it's important, though, that we set some facts clearly in the record. I think it's important to be consistent on how you look at budgets. And if one year you say, I'm fine taking millions more dollars from the taxpayers, and then the next year you say, how can we take millions of more dollars from the taxpayers? That's not consistent. In 4 of the 9 years I've been on this board, I've voted for a mill levy decrease. In 1 of my 9 years, I voted for a 3/4 of a mill increase because of the needs of the college. Last year, we took in $4 million in new money because of increased property values. By the way, the 5.25% comes from the appraiser. As we have reduced it down, we could have said 5.75%. What we're doing again is setting the maximum we can spend, and the mill levy will reflect that. The 5.25% includes population growth. The county appraiser doesn't do this as a static exercise. The county appraiser looks at all the increased value for the year, and they value it on January 1, 2020, just like the appraiser will do on January 1, 2021. That includes new construction to the tune of tens of millions of dollars in this county, partially because of increased population growth. So that's already included in that number. I heard Trustee Lawson say there were no pay raises in this budget. There are indeed pay raises, as Ms. Lears pointed out. We included a 3% pay raise for all the faculty members as part of our collective bargaining agreement, and included everybody else on campus in that 3% raise. So yes, indeed, we are including raises as part of this budget. The reserve level. 2 years ago, we spent $14.5 million more than we brought in. We spent $14.5 million of reserves. Last year, we spent, that was last year.
That was the budget for last year.
The budget for last year. This year, we're projected to spend $3.7 million more than we bring in. That's why we have reserves, so we can spend them in an appropriate manner. This notion that nobody on this board cares about the impact on the community is simply untrue. We all hear about it. Some of us argued about it last year, and some of us voted against a mill levy decrease last year when we actually adopted one. COVID expenses are being taken out of this budget. And as Dr. Leiker said, and I think we all agree, if you look at our expense pie, 70+% of our budget is people. So we're about people, and the cost of teaching online, that professor doesn't take less money or deserve less money because they're teaching online. And we still have the classroom. So we are saving some on electricity, and those are the $1.2 million worth of increases or decreases in expenses. That's part of what you have reflected on campus. So a lot has been said here tonight, a little of it factual in my opinion. Our reserve level at December 31, 2019 was $48 million. Now, some of us like to focus on what the reserve level is in January when we get all of our tuition and an ad valorem property tax payment from the state. And if you look at that, we went from $48 million in December to $106 million in January. And last month, we were down to May 31st, we were down to $70.8 million. So we were $36 million less over a 5-month period. And now we're back up. Why are we back up? Because we got an ad valorem tax payment in June. And we will get tuition payments in August. And then by December, we'll be back down in our reserves to somewhere in the $50 million range, probably. So when you talk about reserves, talk about what our policy is. And when we hear 25% policy, remember this board adopted unanimously a 25% reserve guideline as of 12/31 of each calendar year. We didn't adopt a policy that said at the biggest number we ever get during the year, it can't be above this percent. So I think all of those are support for the budget as presented by the management team and recommended by the management committee. There are no perfect budgets. There's no perfect crystal ball about what will happen this year. But this budget provides all the flexibility we need to provide the mission of this college. And for that reason, I will support it. I'm going to call the roll then. I'll do it as I've done before, starting with officers and then going by seniority. Vice Chair Snyder, motion is to adopt the budget as published and presented by the Management Committee.
Aye.
Trustee Cross?
Yes.
Trustee Ingram?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Lawson?
Mr. Chair, you didn't allow me to have comments. Some of the things that you've mentioned are not what you're saying as facts. So I think those things should be reevaluated. But I am a no vote, as I've stated before.
Trustee Smith Everett?
Yes.
The motion to adopt the budget as published is approved 6-1 with Trustee Lawson voting no.
Mr. Chair, we have two more recommendations to finish our report. We had a recommendation from the transfer of funds from the College Foundation. The Sustainability Committee has requested that $9,000 of recycling proceeds be transferred to the JCCC Foundation to use for scholarships. It is the recommendation of the Management Committee that the Board of Trustees authorize the transfer of $9,000 from the Sustainability Initiatives Fund to the JCCC Foundation to be used for student scholarships, and I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by
I'm
Trustee.
trying to second.
Moved by Trustee Cook, barely by the wire, seconded by Trustee Snyder to approve the transfer to the foundation. Is there any discussion? Dr. Cook.
I'd like to make a comment that since 2012, Dr. Antel and his team have through this transfer of funds, committed $125,000 to scholarships, and their work is highly commendable.
Thank you. Discussion on the transfer? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
No. Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously.
We had one recommendation based on a bid for architectural and engineer services for the science lab renovations. The detail of those bids are found on page 7 and 8 of your board packet. It is the recommendation of the Management Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve the proposal from PGAV Architects for architectural and engineering services for the science lab renovations at an estimated fee range of $1,049,400 to $1,465,650. You can refer to the 20-057 supplemental information on final project costs. All of that is subject to change based on the actual project guaranteed maximum price construction cost, with the final agreement subject to approval by College Council, and I'll make that motion.
It's been moved, and I'm looking to Trustee Smith Everett, seconded by Trustee Smith Everett, to approve the Management Committee recommendation of PGAV Architects for architectural and engineering services for science lab renovations. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I would say that if you look at page 7 on the note, I'd like to remind the board that that's part of a $25 million total project cost. And when we reference the actual guaranteed maximum price, it may not be that amount, but that's what the bid is based upon. And I believe that we are looking at a 4-year project here, as I recall.
Other discussion? If not, all in favor of the recommendation of PGAV Architects, please signify by saying aye.
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 Yes.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously.
We heard a number of reports. Randy Weber, Interim Executive Vice President for Finance and Administrative Services, presented information for an agreement template used for facility rental and also the training services template used by continuing ed. That information can be found on pages 52 and 53 of your board packet and will be in the consent agenda. Rachel Lears reviewed the semi-annual report of budget reallocations. There are a plethora of those found on pages 11 through 14. We do that, like I say, semi-annually. Transfer of funds within college operations. Janelle Vogler, Associate Vice President of Business Services, presented the single source purchase report in the contract renewal report, which can be found on page 6. Tom Hall, Associate Vice President, Campus Services, gave the monthly update on capital infrastructure projects. This report is found on pages 15 and 16 of your packet. Mr. Hall also reviewed the report on the financial status of facilities master plan projects, and that report is found on page 17. And I believe, Mr. Chair, that completes the management report. I will defer to Trustees Snyder and Smith Everett for additional comments if they so choose to make.
Nothing from me.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the Audit Committee report. The Audit Committee met in its quarterly meeting. Trustee Snyder as Vice Chair and myself as Chair are the members of that committee. We met on August 6th. We had an update on the IT asset management process audit, which is an audit of both the hardware and the software. We hired an outside consultant for a third-party review, and it was very informative. I want to thank Tom Pagano and his staff for their cooperation with that. I think we have some good ideas going forward. Justin McDade presented the biannual, twice-annual travel and expense review, where we look at expense reports from trustees and from senior management to ensure they meet all policy guidelines and policy requirements, and they did. Back in, I don't remember the exact date, earlier this year, Blackbaud, which provides a lot of software to nonprofits, had a data breach. That is the service used by the Johnson County Community College Foundation. It was pretty impressive, and Rochelle Boyd reported how quickly we identified the fact that no personal identification information about any trustee or any foundation donors was disclosed, and that was good news. I think it was evidence that our foundation is doing things correctly. We got a quarterly update on new project audits, including an audit of the capital project construction work that's been going on. We had a report from Dr. Sandra Warner, about the business continuity project, which started a couple years ago and is obviously very much in vogue because of the continuity issues related to COVID. She reported an update on that, on where we're headed. We got our quarterly report on the ethics report line, which is the anonymous reporting opportunity within the college. We also got reports on the Keeping Our People Safe Watch, which is known as COPS, on the Behavioral Intervention Team, which is known as BIT. And we got to look at what's coming up on other audits. The only item for action is an approval of the Audit Committee recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the 2020-2021 Audit Committee working agenda, which is shown on page 22 of your agenda, and I would so move.
Second.
Moved by Musil, seconded by Trustee Snyder. Any discussions about the Audit Committee working agenda?
Mr. Chair?
Sir?
Yeah, who is Justin McDade? I never see him.
Justin McDade is our internal audit. He's like the wind.
I know who he is. I'm just saying hi.
Good evening, Trustee Cross. I am lurking tonight.
Thank you very much.
He's our audit guy. He's watching us all the time, Lee. All right, all in favor of the Audit Committee working agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. The next item on the agenda is Human Resources.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I can't.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to note, I believe Trustee Lawson is absent, so I wanted that to record as.
Oh, is that a 6-0, nothing vote on that last
as
agenda?
well as a previous motion.
Okay, so the previous motion was on the PGAV Architects, I believe. That would be 6-0. And then the Audit Committee working agenda would be 6-0. Thank you, Trustee Smith Everett.
Thank you.
All right, we're ready for our human resources.
Sure. Human Resources Committee met by Zoom webinar format on Friday, August the 7th. Ms. Becky Sentliver, Vice President, Human Resources, reviewed the compensation policy 418.04, the JCCC philosophy of compensation, the salary table for faculty position per the October 16th, 2018 through June 30th, 2021 master agreement, and pay grades ranges for salaried and hourly positions. An overview of initial salary placement was discussed. Mr. Jerry Zimmerman, Manager Benefits, gave an annual report on the Retiree Benefit Trust. Ms. Sentliver informed the committee the Paid Holiday Task Force, led by Manager of Benefits Jerry Zimmerman, will be meeting soon to begin discussion on paid holidays, leaves, as well as the Juneteenth holiday. The next Human Resources Committee meeting is scheduled for Friday, October 2nd at 8 a.m. Zoom webinar. And that concludes my report.
Okay, are there any questions about the Human Resources Committee report from Trustee Ingram? And Trustee Lawson, are you, I see you on the screen, but no video. I just want to make sure to see if you can hear and participate. Perhaps not. Okay. Next item, learning quality, Trustee Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Learning Quality Committee met on August 3rd, 8:30 a.m. via Zoom. Trustees Laura Smith Everett and Trustee Lee Cross were in the meeting, along with a large contingency of staff, administration, faculty.
Not a plethora?
Not a plethora this time,
okay.
A large contingency. There's a difference. And I have to say that all of these committee meetings are important and interesting, but I, for one, was really pleased to hear of all the great work that our reports gave to us. Let me give you an example. Jessica Johnson gave an update on the SBDC program, and by the way, the learning quality information is on pages 29 to 33 of your board packet. But Jessica really gave a nice detailed report, the number of new business startups, 575 consulting classes, almost 3,700 consulting case hours, 164 training seminars, 1,170 seminar attendees, almost 6,000 outreach training hours by the staff to various clients, 274 community relations events, 389 requests for information. And the economic impact, the numbers are really impressive. And we sometimes go over these reports and say they're great reports, but when we talk about the impact that this college has out into the community from the Small Business Development Center, it is really, really most impressive. You can read more about that report in your packet. Another report we had was the Solar System Class report that was given by Vince Miller and Ty Edwards. And if you want to know more about this, I think you can go to our website and pull up the solar class subpage. And this whole project just kind of blew me away because it has to do with placing Kansas, Johnson County Community College in Kansas, within the solar system to see how we operate within the solar system and what that would look like. And they have a very strong relationship with the Kansas Institute for Learning, again, another important outreach, and also with Hutchinson Community College. And I think also working with our four-year universities within the state. Student involvement is very impressive. This, I think, is scheduled to launch, if I captured my notes properly, in January of 2021 on a larger scale. Instructors from 4 different departments have been engaged with this project, so there's good interdepartmental work among the faculty. And I think this transition to online that we've been talking about Dr. McLeod can certainly clean up my mess I'm creating here. But I think in that report, the encouragement was that if other faculty used this as a model for online, it's yet another resource. I'm not saying the only one, but it would encourage other faculty to do real-world projects with their students. And the students seem to be very, very enthused about this. And I think the plan that Ty had indicated was to do this and make this available to K through 12 students as efficiently as we can, which from me is another way that we reach out to K through 12 students to have them find interest in Johnson County Community College. I'm going to, when I finish my remarks, ask Trustee Cross and Trustee Smith Everett to clean that up as well. But two really, really exciting reports. Rick Mooring gave a report regarding Student Center Activity Report, and again, you can look at the detail of that project. He talked a lot about the counseling hours that are provided to students. He talked about other student services, student life. We've talked a little bit about that tonight in our budget in terms of basic student services, basic needs, and how the college and the counseling department is relating to the needs we have with this COVID issue. At 426 Zoom appointments with the counseling center with students, 67 walk-in students in the last few months. So again, I know that Dr. Leiker talked a little bit about the challenge in the counseling center, but the counseling center is doing some really great work based on student needs. We also had a report from Gurbachan Singh on transfer and articulation agreements, and those are found in the consent agenda. So with that, Trustee Cross, Trustee Smith Everett, if you have any other comments, I know we were all quite enthused about those reports, but please, your comments.
I will say it was an excellent report. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then it was a wonderful meeting. I enjoy our meetings immensely. Thank you. My disappointments are that Clyde Tomba, a KU graduate, lost a Pluto as a recognition of a planet. And I wish we could use our status and leverage in the higher education world to reinstate Pluto as a planet. But I would have to say I was impressed. My wife from Hutchinson, Kansas said that she felt it was a little conceited that we put the sun in Johnson County. And I said, no, I think that's entirely appropriate. And she says, why? I said, because it was our idea. We came up with it. It was a great idea. So I thought it was a heck of a meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Smith Everett, do you want to clean up either one of those?
I
kidding, you
would
can't see me
just a little
smile.
bit. Just to clarify, the students and faculty have been working to create an app that overlays the solar system onto Kansas. Oh, wow. With Johnson County Community College being the sun. So the neat part about this is it will be an app that will be accessible by K-12 or families and students with COVID. We're probably going to be doing more road trips and reasons to get out, and this is certainly one that they will be able to access when it goes live. Really neat. My 7-year-old was asking me last night, he was talking to my husband and I about the order of the planets, and I said, there is an app and you will be able to drive, and they are matching locations in Kansas with the placement of things in the solar system. So I will let Dr. McLeod correct me if I got any of that wrong, but no offense, of course, to my fellow trustees, but I hope that is a little more clear. I also wanted to celebrate the amazing work with the Small Business Center and just say that I had requested for Director Johnson to break out for me the types of small businesses we serve. And she did that, and I just wanted to share it with you all. We, in 2019, served 475 clients, and it broke down as 28% of those small businesses were women-owned, 6% were veteran-owned, and 32% were minority-owned. with 22% of small businesses not selecting criteria, I guess, for the kind of business they are. But I think that that's really important to note as well. Sometimes in Johnson County, we think it's, predominantly white small businesses, predominantly middle class. And so I found it great to know that we are serving 28% women-owned and 32% minority-owned small businesses in our community. And I know they do tremendous work, and that presentation just proved it. So I encourage you all to check it out in the packet. That concludes my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Smith Everett. Great information. Trustee Cook?
Just two other things that I omitted. Dr. McLeod did give a report that the summer teach-outs are almost complete, and a lot of work goes into finishing that for the benefit of students, and I was remiss in not mentioning that. And then also, Dr. Weber and Dr. McLeod addressed the current enrollment statistics, and we've been getting those as trustees, and the thing that I would remind you of that they reported on is that we're not really comparing apples to apples from the previous year because of the 45-day delay to start fall 2020 registration. So we should keep that in mind. And then also Dr. McLeod said we're already planning courses for the spring of 2021. So a lot of people are busy with a lot of activity scheduling classes and finishing classes for the benefit of our students. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report.
Let's move on to the Treasurer's report. Trustee Cross, do you have a Treasurer's report for us?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board packet includes the preliminary unaudited Treasurer's report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. This preliminary report does not include all fiscal year end adjustments. Some items of note do include, on page 1 is the general post-secondary technical education fund summary. Total fiscal 2020 general fund revenues were 1.2% higher than in fiscal 2019. This was primarily due to the 1.8 million increase in property tax revenues that resulted from increases in the assessed valuation in Johnson County. The college's mill levy was reduced by 0.15 mills in fiscal 2020. General PTE fund expenses for 2020 were approximately 156 million compared to 142 million in 2019. The increase over the last year was primarily related to capital spending for the facilities master plan projects. However, total spending for the fiscal year was less than budgeted, with underspending on such items such as utilities and travel due to COVID. So the college's unencumbered cash balance of June 30, 2020 in all funds was 115.3 million, which is approximately 6 million lower than at this same time last year. Expenditures in the primary operating funds are within the approved budgetary limits. And so, Mr. Chair, it is therefore the recommendation of the college administration that the Board of Trustees approve the Treasurer's report for the month ended June 30th, subject to audit, and I so move.
Been moved by Trustee Cross to approve the Treasurer's report subject to audit. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Trustee Ingram. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Yes.
Opposed, no. Let's reflect that again as a 6-0. I've texted Trustee Lawson, I can't get a response, and although she shows up there, I'm not sure she's hearing us, so reflected as a 6-0.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to add a thank you to Rachel Lears and her staff, as always, for helping me put together that presentation.
Thank you. We're all the way up to the President's report.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Dr. Bound.
Chair Musil, trustees, thank you for the opportunity to share a bit of what's going on at the college and my perspective on those things. First of all, I want to say thank you for passing the proposed budget. My commitment to you as a board and my commitment to the taxpayers of Johnson County is that we will not ask for more than what we need. That's been my training, that's been my experience, and so that's my commitment to you, that we will never ask for more than what we need. Where we are today, there is a tremendous need for Johnson County Community College to be an exemplary community college and to meet the workforce needs, to meet the needs of our students who start with us and transfer onto our four-year partners. And to do that successfully, there has never been a greater need, and your support of the budget is greatly appreciated. I too want to press on my appreciation to our CFO, Rachel Lears, to our interim executive VP, Randy Weber, and to the leadership team of the college, and to all those who throughout the 11-month process touched the budget that led to where we are tonight. So thank you very much for that. You know, we are, as we referred to frequently throughout this meeting, dealing with the global pandemic of COVID-19. It has had a tremendous impact on us as a college. Certainly as we look to the media and the amount of discussion that is taking place in the K-12 space as they approach the start of the school year, as we approach the start of our school year, certainly keeping everyone as safe as we reasonably and possibly can is at the forefront of everything we're doing, while our mission remains the same, and that is to provide students with a tremendous learning opportunity. You hear the conversations and the challenges that families face about deciding, do we send our kids to school or not, for teachers and what they face through all that. And certainly as the discussions are robust, it's those tough discussions that we've never wanted to have but need to have. You also hear that nationally, universities making last-minute decisions about going entirely remote on their campuses. The reality is we fit in neither one of these scenarios, the K-12 or the residential university or college setting, in that we are a commuter campus. I believe that our work in providing the safest possible learning environment for our students to learn and the safest possible environment for our faculty and staff to do their work. We serve students in person, but at a dramatically reduced level from last fall. The safety of everyone involved is essential to us having a successful semester. That balancing act, if you will, that we continually walk through are the needs of our faculty and staff with the educational needs of our students. It is truly a both and from my perspective, and not a this versus that or an either or. It's how do we do that, provide a safe environment for everyone here. We're monitoring the cases in Johnson County very closely. We even had a meeting this afternoon with the Johnson County Department of Health and Environment in looking at how do we best maneuver through this as the higher ed community, just as they have in the K-12 space. Our student success and engagement teams have done a fantastic job of serving students. Our faculty have done a fantastic job of serving students during these unusual, ongoing times. And our facilities team has done fantastic work at providing a safe environment of the cleaning protocols and so forth. And those are just some of the groups that are doing a great job. Thank you again to the Faculty Association for your commitment to serving students, and specifically the addition to the Counseling Hardship Fund. Appreciate that greatly. We talked about enrollment. Enrollment, as it is today, is about 5% down. While that's not where I'd like to see it, to put it in context, the Kansas City, Kansas Community College is down 15%, Metropolitan's down 13%. As you look across the nation, we see community colleges in the 16 to 17%. And my former institution is down even a little bit more than that, and I won't say the number because they'd shoot me. The drops for non-payment occurred this week, and we had about 11% of our students drop for non-payment. If there's any good news in that, the good news is that that's down 3 to 4% over what we've been experiencing in recent years. And I greatly appreciate the work that our team has done to help students get into that paid status. As we move forward and we think about census date and so forth, and we've talked a little bit about this, at least in committee, is that we are going to see a delay in the enrollment of our high school students, our College Now students, as we look to the census. So we really now need to be looking at comparing ourselves to end of term. Because if you look in recent years, that high school populations resulted in about 22% of our enrollment. So it's just to Trustee Cook's comment about not being able to look to census date and having to look at end of term, we've got to keep that in mind. I've got a couple other things that I'd like to talk about, but before I do that, what I'd like to do is take a moment to focus in on our work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And if you could bring up Ty Edwards now, I would greatly appreciate it. Yesterday in our conversation, our all-staff meeting, diversity, equity, and inclusion was at the core of what I spoke about and the core of who I believe we are as a community college. And so the team, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Task Force is co-led by Ty Edwards and Tanya Hughes. As you know, Ty Edwards is a professor of history, and she's going to make some comments and provide an update on where we are.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
We can.
Yes. Okay, good. All right, so I'm Ty Edwards. You can see the slide there. I thought that might just help us get through a few things. You can see the blog there. We try to update that with what we're doing just to have a place where we can point people if you want to keep track of that. So if anyone doesn't know what exactly we're talking about, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force started in fall of 2018 with some faculty who started wondering about if their teaching was being as inclusive as they wanted it to be, and if there were students that they were leaving out. One of the first discussions that started this was my office neighbor taught French, and she came and asked me how she should include her trans students when French is a gendered language. They have male and female parts of the words. And so we ended up starting to discuss that, which then led to a cascading series of questions about how to address these issues widely in a variety of contexts. So that started in fall 2018. And then we expanded to include staff and students in 2019. And then we collaborated with administrators to commence a campus-wide DEI assessment. So if you were watching in the earlier budget slides, you saw a mention of our DEI initiatives. This was what they were talking about, so the DEI assessment. So the assessment is from January to December, so basically this entire year. And we have engaged MGT Consulting, and Fred Seaman, our project lead, is here on the meeting as well. So if you have any questions you want to direct to Fred directly, he's with us. And he's been a wonderful resource and a wonderful partner. He's doing such a great job, so we're really thankful that he's the person we're working with. The assessment will review our policies, procedures. It's a top to bottom review of our campus. They've conducted listening sessions. They've done various work with data and other things that we could get them on campus in the fall. And then we were going to do a survey of all employees and students in the spring. And of course, then COVID happened. So we're going to do that now in the fall. And that's going to be, again, for all students and employees. And I think there was some question of if board members were going to fill out that survey, and that's not the case. And Fred can address that a little bit with us. But I think he's going to be talking to all of you after the survey is complete. So the survey will go out on September 14th, and everyone has about 2 weeks to fill it out. And it's individualized links. I've been promoting all week what the subject line of the email will be and all the things it takes to help people remember to fill it out. been talking to faculty about giving their students extra credit to maybe do a screenshot of the last screen that says thank you for completing, and other things we can do to have people on the staff side encourage their colleagues or their direct reports to take the survey, because of course the better the data, the better we understand our strengths and weaknesses, and the better plans we can make. So then the deliverables that MGT is going to give us by the end of the year include diversity, equity, inclusion best practices in higher education. And our plan is after the survey to have marketing, and they've been working with us really exceptionally as well, that they're going to create a website kind of like we did with the HLC documentation so that people can access some of this stuff. And we're going to have a train the trainer session. We're thinking about doing that in December on those PDD days after grades are due, so that people can maybe really focus on it and have their grading complete. They're also MGT will also produce a report on JCCC strengths and weaknesses in terms of DEI on our campus. And the report will also include short and long-term recommendations with measurable outcomes for future planning. That was one of the things we requested in the RFP. And then in general, so the overall goal is to use the assessment as evidence to craft our specific DEI goals for our institution with methods for monitoring and evaluation to ensure that they are achieved. And then, of course, a larger goal is to entrench DEI best practices in our interactions with our colleagues and how we teach our students and serve the community. And so I just wanted to point out, too, that this work started, some years ago. This isn't something we're just doing in reaction to the protests we've seen this summer or the murder of George Floyd and other horrific events that have happened recently. This is something we've been moving towards prior to that, and all of those events this summer just make it more obvious that this is necessary work for us to do. So does anyone have any questions?
I don't see any. I can't see all participants.
I always do.
Sorry? Was that?
I always do. This
Okay,
is Trustee
yeah,
Smith-Everett.
Trustee Smith-Everett, go ahead. I didn't have the screen up, so I couldn't see anybody.
I know it's hard in this format to see everyone. Thank you, Dr. Edwards. I appreciate you giving us this layout. This helps me tremendously. This is a really important issue for me. One of my big questions is for the survey that's going out in September, will you be able to know how many participants you got from each of the different categories? So how many staff, how many students, how many faculty as it's happening? Like, will you know you got 1,000 students and 200 faculty so that you can direct your reminders, if you will, to ensure we have a really good response rate that really reflects each of those populations?
Yes, so in our meetings that we had this week about how the data will be turned over for MGT to send out the emails, that they are going to differentiate between employee and student so that we can track response rates. And for individual, so they're going to report back to us as we get, so like as we go through the first week, if response rate starts to drop off, they're going to let me know so that we can kind of mobilize. And marketing has already been helping us with how we're going to plan for that, both for the 14th and then over the span of that 2 weeks. And they also are going to have, since it's an individualized link that you get in your email, it's also going to start sending you reminders automatically if you haven't filled it out every few days. So you'll get them individually, but then we'll also see reports on number of students or number of employees generally that have been responding or not responding. And they also said that if our response rates aren't great by the 30th, we can expand that timeline, but our goal is to have it in that 2-week period and to have those high response rates as a result.
Thank you. That was going to be my follow-up, and you already answered it with what happens if. So then my only other question was about the trainer sessions. So the MGT group is providing you all with those best practices, or will they be done together? Because I know there are quite a few faculty on our campus that have been researching this for a while, and I wondered if this was more of a collaborative effort or we're just taking all the direction from MGT when rolling out the trainers sessions.
Well, the best practices and the trainer are separate things. So the best practices is documentation for us to use basically like it's part of the report to use in our strategic planning of how we embed DEI practices in the institution. And then the trainer event is a separate event. And we might have to ask Fred. I think our plan is that Fred, and you're right, I have colleagues that are trained in this, right? They have expertise in these fields. But I think, Fred, your plan is to conduct the training yourself or with MGT staff, right? Let's see, Fred is on the call. Let's see.
It will
Fred,
take a second to promote him to speaker.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Mr. Seaman, if you can unmute.
You're correct, Pat.
Okay.
We will, yes.
Yeah, so Fred said that that's the right expectation. So Fred's office and his staff will be doing the Train the Trainer event. But certainly, we're hoping that this is not, of course, a one-off event, right? That we will use this to train others and then use expertise of our colleagues, but also some of us are really hoping that we will end up hiring people with direct DEI expertise at the college to do this work with us ongoing.
Great. I think we have a real, so I as a K-12 educator in Shawnee Mission, this is also an initiative they've taken on with the leadership of Dr. Fulton over the last 2 years. And I know when you get to the level of really employing people with that background or having that leadership, it always comes down to there aren't enough people in our area that have it, blah, blah, blah. And I have really thought about that partnership between JCCC becoming an area that can grow people that we can then employ throughout our community to have that expertise and have the ability to be referenced or be utilized so that all of our partners that are in this same journey together can utilize us in that capacity as we grow our own strength. So that concludes my comments, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Kai.
Dr. Bound, I don't see other questions. Thank you, Professor Edwards.
I think Trustee Cross has a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to comment. Thank you for this. I would like to note, and I made a proposal earlier in the year that we form a committee among the trustees for a dial. And I think the L is important. With two brothers and several members of my family who've been in the military, just this past year, I asked a brother who's up for lieutenant commander in the Navy right now, like what exactly was leadership? His twin has both graduates from here, attendees here anyway. My brother Peter has a master's degree in leadership from Webster's. And I always used to joke with him, what exactly does that mean? And my brother Paul finally let me know that like the military concept of the unity of command, or even in civil government that oversees the military, the unity of command is critically important. And then teaching, really what leadership is, mostly by listening, taking in the input of a lot of stakeholders, and then making a decision based upon the best available evidence. So I think this is all wonderful. I want to be clear, but I also am advocating for the L to be added, and note that many other institutions and frankly, corporations are doing the same thing. So I love this. I'm just asking respectfully if we could do that, that'd be great. And that concludes my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I know this isn't the end of this, and we're going to be working with this probably in a retreat next spring and elsewhere. So thank you for the update, Professor Edwards and Dr. Bound. You move on with your report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, just the last couple quick things. First, we are in the early stages of a partnership with the YMCA and several local school districts to find a way to do childcare services at select locations during this pandemic period. The needs are real. The needs of meeting essential workers, the families, so their kids are cared for and so forth. So we are early on in the process, but it shows great promise. And we think it's another way that we can serve our community well in partnership with others. We wouldn't be providing the service, we would be providing the space, but it's another great opportunity to serve our community. So, and then finally, in my comments, In the 90-day plan, I reference the beginning work of a strategic planning process. And so that this fall, we will begin that process. We're now forming a crops representative team that will be the steering committee for that work for this year. That will include faculty, staff, and students. We'll be conducting through our institutional effectiveness team an environmental scan. I have seen this done very successfully in pulling together a thought leaders group, folks that are leaders in workforce development, in higher education, in nonprofit, in economic development. When we think about Johnson County and the important role that we play in the economy and the important role we play specifically at Johnson County Community College in preparing great leaders for tomorrow, we'll want to include others in helping to stretch our thinking. And then very traditional mission, vision, values work, goals and strategies. That work will happen between late fall and into the winter. Then as we begin to think about next year's budget and the influence of strategic plan on budget and so forth, I just wanted to plant the seed with you that work is beginning now, and we'll conclude next spring. And there will be touch points throughout the year where we will specifically engage you as trustees in that process. I misspoke in my comments to the faculty and staff earlier this week when I said that we were going to conduct the plan between September and October. It wouldn't be much of a plan if we did it between September and October of the same year, and you would be really disappointed in me if we started in September and it took until next October to get it done. So with that, I'm very excited about the work that we have ahead of us. Incredibly thankful for the work that you do in providing governance for us as a college, and I am incredibly thankful for our faculty and staff for the work that they've been doing and the work that we have ahead. That concludes my report.
Thank you. I'm going to add one thing that the trustees are aware of is that another thing on our agenda for this fall is part of the self-assessment ad hoc committee, board retreats, how to become a high-functioning board with consultants that will help facilitate that. And as in the DEI thing, bring us best practices that hopefully we will all embrace.
Yes.
But I think that's an important part of the future governance of the college.
Thank you.
It is 7:30. We have an executive session later, but I'm going to give, are there questions of Dr. Bound about his report? I know we also all have individual meetings with him, but if there are questions now, raise your hand. I don't see any. He had covered everything perfectly. Oh, Trustee Smith Everett, do not apologize for raising your hand. You're entitled.
Guess who? I want to thank Dr. Bound. I have really appreciated your ongoing communication, both with us personally, as well as your weekly updates. It really allows us to have an understanding of what you're doing and who you're meeting with and how, as a new president, you're getting established both internally and externally. And I found this report to be reflective of that same nature. And I appreciate the inclusivity of our faculty in your report and sharing with us some of the things that aren't as glamorous, but are really important for how we need to move forward and be a community leader, particularly with the COVID. So I want to offer that. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We're to new business. I'm not aware of any new business. I'm not aware of any old business. I'm going to, before the consent agenda, alert the trustees that are appearing remotely that you should have received or will be receiving an email link that will be your own separate Zoom identification and invitation for the executive session. So please monitor your email. With that, the consent agenda is a series of routine items that have been recommended by the administration and or reviewed by a committee. They are generally acted upon in one motion. Any member of the board can pull anything off the consent agenda if they would so choose. With that said, is there a motion, are there any items on the consent agenda that anybody would like to consider separately? Trustee Smith Everett.
I just want to note that I oppose the retirements in the consent agenda under human resources. And that is all.
So you want to make people keep working? We've tried that before, Trustee Smith. We've never been successful, but I understand what you're talking about. All right, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Cook, seconded by Trustee Ingram to approve the consent agenda as published. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. The last item on our agenda is an executive session, and I would entertain a motion to go into executive session for a period of 30 minutes for consultation with legal counsel on a pending legal matter which would be deemed privilege in the attorney-client relationship. No action will be taken during the session. The session will begin at 7:40 p.m. and will end at 8:10 p.m. We will reconvene in this room on the same Zoom link. If you're participating by Zoom now as a member of the public, staff, or faculty, we will be back on this same Zoom link. We would like to invite Dr. Andy Bound, Dr. Randy Weber, Becky Sentlever, and Kelsey Nazar to join the executive session. May I have such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Snyder, seconded by Trustee Ingram.
Mr. Chair, that leaves us with 4 minutes. Is there any way we could
I'm
get a
looking.
little
you're
more
right.
break between that?
The clock back here is slow. We'll do 7:45, and we will reconvene at 8:15. Is that okay with the mover and seconder?
Yes.
Okay.
What if we get done sooner, or do you not expect?
Well, I think under the law, as ridiculous as it may seem, we have to reconvene at the time we say we will.
Okay.
So we will be back here at 8:15.
And just for clarification for the folks watching, will this link be dropped while we're gone? It'll stay on. So anyone that wants to watch, just stay on.
And I believe it will probably have a screen that says the board is in executive session. Yes, I'm getting the thumbs up. So this link will remain live. Those of us here will move into the Lido conference room. Those of you online, trustees, you will get a separate link to a new Zoom invitation. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Did we vote on that? We did not. Opposed? No. The motion to recess an executive session passes. We have about 10 minutes until we start, and we will look for Lee and Laura and Angelina at 7:45. Thank you. Good evening. It is 8:15 p.m. We have reconvened in open session after a 30-minute executive session to discuss matters of the attorney-client privilege. We have nothing else on the agenda. I think all of the trustees are available either in person or by Zoom. I see Trustee Cross and Trustee Smith Everett. Is Trustee Lawson on?
I don't see Trustee Lawson yet. Oh, is she there?
she's
Okay,
there?
good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Trustee Ingram, seconded by Dr. Cook. To adjourn, all those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody no? We are adjourned. Thank you all for your time.